Hi, everyone. In today's very special episode of Jumpstart Lightning, we are announcing ArcBox 2.0. Stay tuned. Hey, everyone, Lior is here, and today we have a very special episode of Jumpstart Lightning. I have Dell with me.
Hi, folks. My name is Dale Kirby. I'm a cloud solution architect in U.S. Global Partner Solutions, and I'm also the lead engineer for Jumpstart ArcBox.
So, Dell, we've been working on ArcBox for a while, but for the audience that don't know what ArcBox really means, can you share with them what is
Definitely.
it that we're actually doing?
Yeah, definitely. ArcBox is your fully contained sandbox environment for getting hands-on with all things Azure Arc. As you might know, Azure Arc makes up several different sets of technology pillars, everything from Azure Arc enabled servers, Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes, Azure Arc enabled data services, and more. And so what we wanted to do was give end users who are looking to get hands-on with Azure Arc, regardless of what they want to kind of play around with, just a fully contained sandbox environment that they can deploy into an Azure subscription and get started playing right away with Azure Arc technology.
So Dale, ArcBox, as you are describing that, it's a pretty beefy solution, right? We're deploying a lot of things as part of ArcBox. But what we heard from our users and customers that they really like the full deployment of the solution, the full flavor of the solution. But we also wanted to provide them with something that is a bit more lightweight. So can you share with the audience what is it that we've been working on for the past few months?
Yeah, if we can take a look at the diagram, the architecture diagram for the current version of ArcBox, which we're now going to be calling ArcBox Full. As I mentioned, you can see it's got pretty much all things Azure Arc in it. It comes with Azure Arc enabled servers in the form of 5 Hyper-V guests that we onboard as Azure Arc enabled servers. It comes with 2 different Kubernetes clusters that we onboard as Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes clusters. And on one of those clusters, we're also deploying Azure Arc enabled data services in the form of SQL managed instance and Postgre hyperscale. So that's a lot. You can imagine all that stuff deployed into an Azure subscription could take a little bit of time. And maybe be more than what some users are looking for. And so we came up with the idea of having different flavors of ArcBox, where if you're an IT pro, for example, that just wants to get hands-on with Azure Arc enabled servers functionality, well, there's a flavor of ArcBox for you. So the original ArcBox, you might be familiar with today, we're calling the full version. That's everything you know and love in ArcBox, plus some new goodies as part of our version 2 release. We're also including new automation templates for Azure Bicep and HashiCorp Terraform for users that want to deploy with something other than traditional Azure Resource Manager templates. And there's a ton of other automation improvements and fixes. But why don't we take a look at the IT Pro diagram here? And you can see that in the IT Pro flavor, which an end user, by the way, specifies a flag with their deployment to what flavor they want. So if I give my deployment the IT Pro flavor flag, then I'm going to get just this deployment with only the Azure Arc enabled server and the Azure Arc enabled servers resources and the Azure Arc enabled SQL Server resources, along with some management artifacts that kind of can showcase the power of how Azure Arc helps you leverage Azure control as a control plane for your on-premises or multi-cloud resources.
Dale, what I like about the ArcBox solution is that it unlocks a lot of capabilities, but it's very unique in the sense of Azure Arc, because what we're doing with this is that we want to make sure that you're not constrained by the fact that in order for you to actually enjoy Azure Arc enabled servers, you actually need to have servers that are deployed outside of Azure. And in order for you to get to a point that you have these servers, you need to onboard them into Azure. With ArcBox, what I like about it is that we're actually taking care of this for you using this nested virtualization and the automation that we created. But I wanted you to share with maybe with our viewers, what are the use cases that we are seeing for the usage of ArcBox?
Yeah, great. There's tons of use cases that we see every day. One of the core use cases is just training and skilling. If you are a customer or a partner or even an internal resource at Microsoft that's looking to get hands-on, and if you're like me, you learn by doing and just getting in there and breaking stuff and getting hands-on, then ArcBox is your go-to resource for everything Azure Arc related. And because it's backed up by the Azure Arc Jumpstart project, there are an awful lot of additional scenarios that you can kind of drill down into with ArcBox as kind of the base foundation for your lab or your testing environment. So that's one core way that we see people using ArcBox. Another core way is because of all the automation that's built into ArcBox and backed by the Jumpstart, by the Azure Arc Jumpstart. It's a great way to just have a testing ground or a environment for building, as a starting point for building POCs and reusing some of that automation, some of those scripts, some of those templates that are part of ArcBox today, to give your POC or your pilot basically a kickstart to get you going and not have to reinvent the wheel. And there's also tons of other use cases, everything from integration testing to having a quick demo environment if you need to demo for a customer or a partner. Lots and lots of ways that we see ArcBox used.
That's awesome. So Dale, I think that at this point, all it's left is for you to show me the magic.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and jump over to Azure Portal really quickly here. Let's see, I've got an Azure Portal up right here where I've deployed ArcBox with the IT Pro flavor. So you see in this resource group, I've just called it ArcBox IT Pro to keep things simple. And after I've deployed ArcBox, with the IT Pro flag, I'm going to see 20 resources in my resource group. And there's a number of different kinds of resources that we'll take a look at, but let's just get right to the meat right away and look at the Azure Arc enabled resources. So if I scroll down here, you can see I've got 5 different Azure Arc enabled servers. As Lior, as you mentioned earlier, these are actually Hyper-V guests on a Hyper-V host, and we've onboarded those through the ArcBox automation as Azure Arc enabled servers. So that's all taken care of automatically by the ArcBox automation. We've also got an Azure Arc enabled SQL server. One of those guests happens to have SQL server on it, so we're also onboarding that as an Azure Arc enabled SQL server. So if we drill into some of these servers, and I'll just pick on the Windows 2022 server, we can see that not only are we just deploying the server and onboarding as an Azure Arc resource, we're also doing things like deploying some extensions on it, like the Microsoft Monitoring Agent and the Dependency Agent for Windows. These are actually deployed as part of a policy remediation. So there's an Azure policy that gets deployed as part of ArcBox. And I think that's something to keep in mind, that we're not just deploying servers and onboarding them as Azure Arc enabled servers. We're also deploying a lot of the management artifacts that's going to make working with Azure Arc and working with Azure as the control plane to manage your hybrid resources that much easier. So that's definitely one key takeaway. It's not just the servers, it's also these management artifacts and these other things that are part of the automation.
So I know that one of the things that I really like about the ArcBox solution is the fact that it's also very modular, right? Because right now you're showing the IT Pros version, and obviously we created this modular approach for you to deploy either IT Pros or full and the future roadmap flavors that we're going to come up with. But if you're thinking about ArcBox, what you can actually do is if you're done using those simulated Azure Arc enabled servers, what you can do is you can take those servers or disconnect them from the environment, but actually still using those capabilities that we automated for you, like log analytics and Defender integration and Sentinel and all that stuff. You can actually use those after. So it's really extendable in that way, that you're not just constrained to that sandbox environment that we created for you, aka ArcBox, but you can go and extend it on, beyond that. But another thing that I know that we've developed is the Workbooks, which kind of gives a single pane of glass. Can you show me this?
Yeah, definitely. So that's a great example of another thing that you could reuse as part of your own, your own POCs or pilots. So one of the other artifacts we deploy is an Azure Monitor workbook. And I'm going to go ahead and actually I've already got it open just to make things a little bit faster. And so what this workbook does is it gives you, a single pane of glass. Sometimes we call this a unified operations strategy for having Azure as that window into all of your resources, on-prem, hybrid, multi-cloud, it doesn't matter. Azure Arc's got you covered. And so with this workbook, I've got a single place to go to check across my entire server inventory. And by the way, we're talking about IT Pro today, but for the full version, this also includes things like our Kubernetes clusters and things like that we onboard. But great way to manage and monitor our inventory. Obviously, doing things like monitoring our servers and things like that is something we can do. Security kind of goes without saying. There's integration with Microsoft Defender for cloud. And there's also really great integration with some of these log analytics solutions like change tracking and update management. So you see here at a glance, I can tell on all my onboarded Azure Arc enabled servers, what services do I have running? I could do things like create alerts or generate, run automated runbooks if things stop or start based on things that I set up in Azure Monitoring with Azure Alerts. Same thing with update management. At a very quick glance, I can see what's the status of patches on all my server inventory in my environment. So just one way that we kind of tried to help you realize what that single pane of glass vision looks like for using Azure Arc with all the other great Azure management services.
So, Dale, ArcBox is like super cool. We did a lot of work in order to make sure that our customers and actually our own field as well here at Microsoft been able to really enjoy that solution, because Azure Arc is such a unique solution and it involves a lot of technologies, like you mentioned, and ArcBox provide them with this comprehensive experience when it comes to not just the onboarding stuff, but also the unified operation layer. Dale, what I want to share with the audience today is also the fact that ArcBox is officially the automation engine for the landing zone accelerator for Azure Arc enabled servers that we are coming up with today. So today we are also announcing Azure Arc enabled servers landing zone accelerator, and ArcBox, and specifically the IT Pros version that we just showed you, is the automation for that experience. So what you can do is you can just go to the landing zone accelerator, try out ArcBox for IT Pros as part of that experience. Another thing, Dale, we also added a lot of reliability options, right, with ArcBox. It's not just about the fact that we did all these flavor stuff, which are super cool, but for us, when we're looking at ArcBox, we want to make sure that this is a reliable solution. When you are coming to the Jumpstart, and this is one of the design principles of the Jumpstart, right, Dale, that you're not going to fail doing this.
Right.
And so what we did is we added a lot of reliability options to that, like supporting Cluster API version 1.0 in the full version, right? That's the GA version for Cluster API. That's the Kubernetes cluster that we're deploying data services on top of, extended login mechanisms, and so much more. So I'm super excited about that. So Dale, for the audience that wants to try this out, how do they find ArcBox 2.0?
Yeah, well, the best way to get started is just go straight to the Azure Arc Jumpstart. That's azurearcjumpstart.io in your web browser. And then right on the left-hand side, you're going to see a link for Jumpstart ArcBox, and that'll have dedicated READMEs with end-to-end guidance on exactly what you need to do, what the prerequisites are, and even like things like what region you can deploy to and all that kind of good stuff. So that's the best way to get started, is to head to the Azure Arc Jumpstart, click on Jumpstart ArcBox, and dive in.
That's awesome. And for our viewers, if you want to enjoy more of this content that we're coming with here in the Jumpstart Lightning YouTube channel, please give us a big like and subscribe to the channel. It helps to support the channel. And again, if you want to see more of this content, this is where you're going to find it. So make sure to like and subscribe. Dale, I want to say thank you for a beautiful work on ArcBox 2.0 and flavors. And I'm super excited about it. And I know that you are as well.
Yeah, it was definitely a collaborative effort. There's a big team involved that helps to build this stuff. So it was a pleasure to work with
big shout out.
Yeah.
Big shout out to the Jumpstart team, Laura Nicolas and Matthew Grimmett. Like we all work together. And big shout out to everyone. And for our viewers, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Bye,
Thanks, everyone.